Bruce, you must have something really good too.
Of course I do. It's Bruce Danielson, and I guess I'm here to entertain you too.
Welcome everybody to the Tuesday, June 9th, 2020 informational meeting. We'll call the meeting to order, and we will try again this week with the UDC update from the meeting. I don't know if Councillor Kiley is out there. Are you with us, Councillor Kiley?
Councillor Kiley is here.
Amen.
Can you hear me this week? Hey, great. What I was trying to communicate last week, but we had audio issues, is I was not in attendance at this meeting. I was on my way back from Pier at the time. However, Councillor Starr, if he was in attendance, should be able to give you the report as Vice Chair of the committee.
I guess you're on the hot seat.
I did. I saw it roll downhill. I'll do both of these then. Trying to do it off the top of my head. It's that normal time of year for the UDC where they're moving money and construction projects are moving along. And to be quite honest, I don't recall off the top of my head. So I was more prepared for the library update with the board. So I believe that's next. So
would you like,
Councillor, I did pull up the agenda, and maybe Councillor Starr, between the two of us, I can read off the items and he can, I'm assuming most of these were approved, but he can verify. Would that work, Councillor Starr?
absolutely. That would be perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Actually, the first item that needed approval was a 2021 to 2024 Transportation Improvement Program, the TIP Public Participation Plan. And I'm assuming that was approved, Councillor?
It was. Good job.
Okay. Then the next item was the I-229 Exit 6, the 10th Street Interchange Modification Justification Report Public Participation Plan. And again, approval was requested.
And it was granted.
And Councillor Starr, the result? It was granted. Okay. The tag team is starting to get in sync now.
Oh, we got it.
Item number 5 was the I-229 Exit 9 Benson Road Interchange Modification Justification Report and Environmental Documentation.
And that was
approval was
approved.
requested on that. Okay. And item 6 was I-29 85th Street Interchange Build Grant Letter of Support. Approval was requested, and Shannon Austin had presented that one.
And she did a nice job of making the presentation, and we did approve that. That is one of the most exciting projects that we have going that's next up, is to open up that corridor. There's plenty of traffic and growth in that part of town. So that's been a great project.
I would agree with Councillor Starr. Yeah, that's going to open up a lot of different possibilities. Item 7 was Maple Street Park Street Build Grant Letter of Support. That too was presented by Shannon Austin and Shannon Schultz. So we had the Shannon and Shannon team.
And it was approved.
And okay, very good. And the last one that required approval was the 2020-23 Transportation Improvement Program TIP Revision, number 20-003. Sarah Gilkerson had presented that.
And it was...
The remainder... Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it was approved.
Okay, very good. And the remainder is just informational. They discussed the 2020-2023 TIP Administrative Amendment, number 20-004, and discussed then 2020-2023 TIP Administrative Amendment, number 20-005. And then Jim Feeney presented the first draft of the 2021 Unified Planning Work Program. And the public hearing was at the Technical Advisory Committee was held on May 14th at 2 p.m. And then other business included the 2021-2024 STIP meeting dates and times. The informational public meeting was is going to be held June 23rd at 3 p.m. in the CCOG boardroom, and the formal public meeting will be held July 8th at 7 p.m. at the Southeast Tech Sullivan Health Center in Sioux Falls and live stream via South Dakota DOT's Facebook page. And the Sioux Falls Transit Temporary Reduction in Service in Response to COVID-19 was presented by Sam Kabelcock. And then lastly, the 2045 Long Range Transportation Plan was presented by Mr. Jim Feeney. And then the meeting adjourned.
Do you concur?
So there you go. After 2 weeks between the two of us, we got her accomplished. Thank you, Councilor Starr.
Thank you, Councilor Kiley. It was
That
great
was a
team.
fun little game of ping pong update. Thanks, fellas. We'll move on to City Council open discussion. If anybody has anything.
Mr. Chair, if I could.
Yes, Councilor Starr.
I think we've kind of fallen off with meetings going, but the Board of Directors for the Siouxland Heritage Museums met last week. And I wanted to at least update everyone. They're in the process of opening. And what was unique is that there is a new display that is opening up, and because it finished in the middle of April, there hasn't been a public opening that they would normally do in their rotation. But having the election counting going on in the old courthouse, or one of the places where the process was taking place, while people were waiting for results, Mr. Hoskins, the museum director, took many members of the media and anyone that was interested, got a preview of that display. That it's really cool. It's got pictures from the 1950s of 9th Street, and then a picture right above it, or a display, a panoramic excuse me, a panoramic display of 9th Street today, and making the comparison of where we've come in the last 60, 70 years almost between the pictures that were there. So it's an awesome display if you're out to get a chance to take a look. The display is awesome. So a lot of the time for the board meeting was spent on reopening, reorganizing weddings and different events that are taking place. All of the events for June and July have been postponed or canceled. So starting the first week of August, a lot of the weddings and a lot of those type of things are back on. And so that's a big part. Where it really will affect us is the enterprise fund for the museum. Their budget is going to be hugely impacted because this is normally their busiest time of the year for rentals and different programs and things, as well as visitors to the museum. So their normal budget will be just fine, but like I said, a lot of the enterprise funds, a lot of the other extra programs, so interns, summer employees, and those type of things will have kind of been pushed by the wayside and as part of this COVID time. So,
all right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the update, Councilor Erickson.
Thank you. I will just give just a really short synopsis of, as you know, Councilor Kiley and I are on the SPARK task force, which is the economic recovery group. From there, there's different cluster groups. We did get an informational meeting, some information at our info meeting a couple weeks ago. From that, I was asked to be on one of the cluster groups. You will see many invites floating around on social media as well as other emails. I will make sure that the whole city council is invited to any of those that you choose to attend virtually. Today, we did hold one. My cluster group held one today. And it's also being streamed YouTube and being shared. So I will get that in your hands. You can watch it at whenever it works for you. We've got Jody Schwan is being the moderator and really just trying to get some experts in many different industries and fields. There's some with a hospitality kind of lens on it. There's some with healthcare, banking, development, financial, and really just trying to get a footprint statewide, not just Sioux Falls, but it's really about the region and the state as a whole, because the whole state is impacted with this. So it's been a pleasure to serve on that, and we continue to have 1 to 2 to 3 meetings each week that are all done electronically. So I'll continue to give better updates via email to you all and make sure that you have those YouTube videos in your hands. So if you want to join earlier, you can, or just watch them at your leisure. The second item that I just wanted to mention is this last weekend was the first baseball tournament It went off wonderfully. We had teams from way out of state that were so jazzed to be here in Sioux Falls and be able to kind of get back to some normalcy, so to speak. And really the key is to really provide consumer confidence in making sure that people know that you can go out and be safe and still continue to do those things that we love to do. And so what an exciting time that people came all the way from Washington to Spokane, Washington, I believe is where they came from, to good old Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and they're excited to come back for more tournaments as they can't play in their own community, and there was others as well. You'll hear some soccer tournaments being hopefully announced soon, as well as many other events. So it's good news as we continue to move forward and, like I said, get back to some sort of normalcy. So that's all I've got.
Thank you. Anybody else for public input? Or not public input, open discussion, sorry. Okay, if not, we'll move into our presentation for the day. Our Assistant Director of Public Health, Alicia Kalura, I hope I say your last name correctly. Sorry, but thank you for being here. Welcome.
Thank you, City Council. I am Alicia Kalura, Assistant Director of the Health Department, and I'm here to continue the conversation and the progress of the Community Triage Center. I will just note that with the impact that we've had in our community with COVID-19 and the need to respond to that event, many of on our health management team have been asked to do other duties as assigned, and Jill Franken is really working and leading that EOC effort and has asked me to take the role of representing the city on the project team. But, you know, as fortunate as I am to be able to represent this great project, I've had many, many people assist me in the transition, and from the city team that includes facilities, engineering, finance, the attorneys, and the mayor's office. And I just want to acknowledge all of them in helping me through this transition. I'd also like to thank Commissioner Karski for being here today. I believe Carrie Benz will be stepping in, and also Aaron Surska is here to represent this partnership as well as the project team. And I think before I go on, I just want to address, Councilor Sale mentioned something to me a few moments ago that I think probably some of you are wondering about. You did receive a copy of the Joint Participation Agreement just today, and I just wanted to update you that the intention was that we would have that completely signed and ready for your review. Maybe you wouldn't be. You'd be surprised how the mechanics of that can work sometimes. So I wanted to get it to you as quickly as possible, as complete as possible. But knowing that the joint participation in the lease agreement that I will present next week, as well as a project update, is a lot for you to absorb, I did schedule 2 council informationals so that you would have ample time to get through those documents and also ask me questions. So just a little bit of an update on that. So the purpose of the Community Triage Center is really to meet a gap in our community and allow for residents to access acute psychiatric services, medically managed detox, behavioral health triage in a community-based setting. If we're able to do that, then we can meet the needs of our most vulnerable residents at the time that they need it. We can also reduce our emergency room visits as well as our jail bookings. For example, earlier data that you would have heard is that from the baseline data report, which came out in 2016, we had 6,300 patient visits to the emergency room that were related to behavioral health alone, and over 4,200 of our jailed inmates reported mental illness or substance use disorder at that time as well. We can only assume that those numbers have increased over time, and the project team is working on pulling together a new baseline data report. While emergency room visits and jail bookings, while reducing those are beneficial to our organizations, agencies, and taxpayers, most of all, it's that we will be providing the right care at the right time by the right staff, which ultimately realigns our community and fiscal investments to help produce the best outcomes for our individuals, heal families, and help residents recover their lives and their livelihoods. Examples of Community Triage Center services will include sobering center, medically managed detox, psychiatric acute care services, substance use disorder assessment, medically assisted treatment for people who are addicted to opioids, and also case management and referral to community-based services, or that warm handoff that you've heard mentioned several times. Now, I know this project has been many years in the making, and it's been carefully supported with needs assessments, concept plans, community and partner meetings, and data. We also know that COVID-19 is something that is impacting not only the physical health of our community, but the mental health of our community. So I wanted to talk about some trends that we're becoming aware of. Federal agencies and experts are warning us that we may be in store for a historic wave of mental health problems, including depression, substance use, post-traumatic stress, and suicide. A recent Gallup poll confirmed this, with 15% of Americans indicating that COVID-19 is impacting their mental health. And at Kaiser Family Foundation, a similar survey found that 19% of Americans reported that COVID-19 was having a major impact on their mental health. We're starting to see some of that through local data as well. The Sioux Falls Police Department did see an increase in mental health calls from March and April 2019 to March and April 2020. In fact, 126% increase. And very fortunately, while the number of completed suicides did not increase, they did report an increase in the number of suicide attempt calls that they responded to. Our local chapter of NAMI, or the National Alliance on Mental Illness, has shared with us that they are fielding calls, more calls related to depression, anxiety, loneliness, and isolation. And our helpline center is reporting a 45% increase in calls related to people who need mental health support or care for their addiction. So, COVID-19 is one crisis. It's a crisis that's impacting us globally, nationally, and locally. No doubt, as a community, we will face additional crises in the future. And, by supporting a community triage center, it's a very tangible way that we can support our residents during time of crisis. So just to catch you up on a few of the 2020 milestones, I believe Jill was in reporting to you in January, February. In January, there was a signing ceremony amongst the Sioux Empire Triage Center nonprofit, solidifying their bylaws and forming that relationship. In February, you, as a city council, approved an intent to lease the city annex as the future site of the triage center. Also in February, an RFP was released, and Steve Lindquist was hired as the project director representing the Sioux Empire Triage Center nonprofit. Steve has a long history of leading behavioral health and addiction services within our state, including many years of progressive leadership. He, after retiring from Avera Health, he's continued to serve in his field through special projects and recently as the interim director of South Dakota Human Services. Steve is here today and provides a great level of subject matter expertise, and I just asked if he would come up and introduce himself to you quickly. Steve?
Thanks, Alicia. As she mentioned, I'm hired on as an independent contractor with the Sioux Empire Triage Center. My title is project director, and in that role, I've been asked, what do you do? And I've told some people I'm a lot like a midwife. I had nothing to do with the beginnings of this, but my project is to bring it to fruition and have the doors open. So that's the end product that I hope to deliver to you, is a functioning triage center. I think this is a quite unique public-private partnership that is developed between city, county, and our two healthcare systems. There's benefits all the way around to all four parties, but it also takes an investment in people. And what I see happening here is a sense of all four partners recognizing the inherent worth and dignity of each person. And we're trying to help folks through very tough times that they're having in their lives. And hopefully helping them get through that bumpy time and into better, more productive things. Some folks, it takes a while. For others, it's a brief episode and they're on to bigger and better things. So this will be a resource for the entire community that will be available and offer some very unique services in a way that you don't have to go to the hospital, you don't have to go to the emergency room. You can talk to somebody and figure out what are next steps. You'll get some help there. But it fills a gap that we've had between maybe traditional outpatient services and inpatient services, and maybe it's a little bit lower level than outpatient even, where I can go talk to somebody and not have to make a commitment to a long-term engagement in getting help. This is going to be immediate, 24 hours a day resource available for people. We think it will, as Alicia said, reduce recidivism in our jail system, also in hospitalization, and the detox center is going to move to a higher level of care from being what's in the vernacular social detox to a medically managed detox. So it should be able to deal with people who have more intense needs than what that resource has been able to do previously. So it's a real pleasure to be part of this project, something I never expected, and we're here, and so appreciate Alicia and the information she's providing to you.
Thank you.
And lastly, as I mentioned earlier, the joint participation agreement was approved by the Sioux Empire Triage Center nonprofit, and that's what I'd like to review with you for consideration of your approval as well. So, current priorities to continue moving the project forward. We know that the Triage Center has been a priority of the City Council for a number of months now. Councilor Erickson, you spent quite a bit of time on the policy committee helping with the formation of this project. The council approved funding for the build out of the City Center third floor in hopes that the City Annex could be the future home of the Triage Center. The City Council approved Health's 2020 budget, which included appropriations to financially support this project. In February, the Council approved an intent to lease the annex, and also the City Council ranked the Triage Center as one of its highest priorities for the 2021 budget. So over the next 2 weeks, what I hope to do is just continue to provide you education and ask you to continue taking action to support the Triage Center. Both the joint participation agreement and the lease agreement will require your approval. And again, I will talk more about the lease agreement next week. In addition to council approval that we are seeking, some other things that are being worked on is next week we will be initiating the design process, and Steve will be leading that effort with the project team. And also city staff is on task to be to move from the city annex to the city center by July 20th. So over the next few weeks are critical, but if we're able to get through it, our hope and our goal as a project team is to meet the deadline of opening the doors by the end of 2020. So again, what I sent to you earlier today is that cooperative agreement. And what it does is it establishes the cooperation between the city, Sanford, Avera, and Minnehaha County, as well as the funding approach, which I'll go through in a little bit more detail. It formally establishes the partnership, and it outlines the relationship amongst the four parties. So to share with you the financial commitment that is outlined for the city of Sioux Falls. Again, in 2020, what you approved in Health's budget was $257,000, and $157,000 of that will go to the existing detox. That is an existing financial support that you budget for. $100,000 was added to that commitment, and that $100,000 will go to some of the initial startup and operational costs that will occur in 2020. Moving forward, what the joint participation agreement outlines is that the city's financial commitment would be an amount of $173,000 in the in-kind lease, and that's the value of the annex lease. That number was an informal assessment by our real estate team in 2019, looking at comparable real estate rates for downtown by square footage. And then the existing annual contribution to the detox center, which is $157,000, and then an additional annual contribution of $100,000. Hopefully soon you'll have a chance to examine all of the pages of the joint participation agreement, but you'll notice that it outlines the financial commitment of the three other entities as well. And they are very similar, but they're not the same. You'll notice, for instance, the city has a considerable in-kind contribution, and some of the other contributions vary. But overall, the intention, they are very close to support that estimated $1.6 million estimated budget of the triage center annually. So the city is a very important partner, and we're asking for a considerable in-kind commitment as well as financial commitment. So I just wanted to share with you some of the protections of city interests that are both contractual, but also just within the relationship that it's been established. Of course, there are many provisions for insurance and indemnification with the contract between the city and the county of Erin Sanford that holds indemnification amongst the parties as well as appropriately insures all of the parties. And certainly when a vendor has been identified, they will be asked to provide the same type of insurances as well. All of these items have been approved by both our city legal team and our risk management team. As with all city contracts, there's a clause that if you do not appropriate the money in the annual budget, that the city cannot have a further financial obligation. And also there's a provision in the agreement that stipulates that there'll be an annual operational report that the nonprofit will be able to provide to the partner so that the partners can continually evaluate the project. Now, while these are contract provisions, there are other safeguards as well. I think one of the most important being that, this is a partnership amongst 4 entities. The city is one partner, and each entity is a stalwart supporter in the project, committing time, energy, and money to bring this center to life, sharing any potential risk, but also sharing in the potential high reward of this project for our community. And lastly, this project will have extensive performance monitoring. I've referred to the 2016 baseline report. Ongoing evaluation funding is being provided by the MacArthur Foundation, and we will continue to work with USD and Augustana Research to continually evaluate this project minimally every 6 months, but most likely every month and every quarter there'll be a detailed evaluation plan. So I think that this new agency in our community will have quite a detailed evaluation, probably unlike we are used to seeing. So what's next? Again, today's focus is just bringing you up to date, going through some of the meat of the joint participation agreement. Next week, I'll come back with some more details on the lease agreement. If all goes well and on track, then first reading and second reading for those items could occur on 6/16 and 6/23, and then the documents can be formally signed 20 days after that. So I'm available for questions now. We also have other members from the project team and city team. So thank you.
Thank you for that update, Alicia. Councilors, any questions? Councilor Neitzer?
In the agreement, it states triage cannot and shall not be or deemed to be engaged in the practice of medicine, and it goes on to have some discussion about that it's, in any event, there's some legalese about the practice of medicine. Can you just explain that for just a lay person when I see that they're obviously going to be doing some things medical and then it says that? What is that doing?
As I read this, my understanding would be that the intention of the Sioux Empire nonprofit is to contract for the services of the triage center. So eventually the vendor would be the provider of, the provider of care. They would be in the practice of medicine. The board members themselves will not be practicing medicine, but the vendor, and at that time, that vendor would be acquiring the appropriate licensed staff, insurances, things like that, just to keep all the members of the agreement protected, since it's medical services will be provided.
Making clear the entity itself, they are not medical practitioners and,
right.
and don't need that licensure and all
right.
those things. Do you foresee that that the different partners' contributions is going to be ongoing into perpetuity, or this gets to some point in which there's some sort of, I don't know, revenue model, that, or is this, what do you think for the future?
Well, what I can share with you is that the RFP was written with specific language that there is expectation from the vendor to develop a financial sustainability plan. So we will be looking for the vendor to bill for third-party services, as well as develop a cost share plan for residents who have the means to cost share for their care. And I can tell you the project team is already working on whatever funding resources we are able to find available to support the project. So speaking from, the health department operates Falls Community Health. So will there be large profits in the future? I would not predict that, but the project team and the vendor will work on a financial sustainability plan.
And I will defer after this one, but so if somebody maybe is having, let's just take the example of maybe they're having a mental health crisis, and normally they would go potentially to the emergency room, and they walk in here and they get presumably some sort of a consultation, maybe some very acute, maybe counseling to bridge them and then they get referred to whatever it's going to be, a family doctor or wherever. Is there a charge to anybody for that, or if they have insurance, or how does that look?
Yeah, again, that'll be developed through a vendor, but again, we would like to see the vendor set up a financial modeling system that allows for them to do some cost sharing with patients who can afford it. And that's, when I said cost sharing, that's exactly what I mean. Will they charge? Will they not charge? No one will be turned away from the center if they cannot pay, but if they do have the means, is there a way that we can recover some of that cost sharing? Also, we would like for this to be an accredited facility so that they can bill insurance, Medicare, Medicaid, as it's appropriate for the level of credentialing that the center has.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. One of the things that we walked through were some hiccups, I'll say, in state law. Are there still additional things that need to be changed with state law? Or, I mean, I don't want to use all these acronyms because I will probably mess them up anyways, but there was a lot of involuntary, voluntary, who can stay, who can't stay, what do you have to do, what does this mean? Who do we have to, what if they're a minor, who do we have to tell? And so were we able to make some changes with state law, or are those still needed? I know Senator Soholt was really a huge help with trying to make some of those changes as well.
Yeah, I think, Councilor Erickson, those are going to be ongoing conversations. Certainly at a state level, conversations that we want to continue to have are how can we provide the level of service that will optimize the amount of billing that we can do, again, to account for the sustainability of the center. I'm not aware of any services that we won't be able to provide or people that we won't be able to provide services to because of state law. But it's just a conversation that we want to have ongoing so that, I'll give you an example. Right now, one of the things we're working through is a 3.2 level, which is the social detox, versus the 3.7, which is the medically monitored detox. We're getting into technical terms now, but what type of staff and what type of credentialing and what kind of policies and procedures are we going to need to have in place to properly support a medically managed detox? Those are also ongoing conversations that we'll be having with the state. So I don't have all the answers to that today, but I think we feel like we have enough of a foundation that we'll be able to open our doors and start serving.
Wonderful, thank you. And as we move forward, I just hope that that's not something that the group is I hope that if there are changes that need to go, do it. This is an opportunity for us to pave the way. And it's not, again, about Sioux Falls, it's about the region, because let's be honest, we're gonna have people from all over different counties and regions that at one point, there's been this vision of having 3 of these across the state, whether it's Pierce, Sioux Falls, and Rapid City, and Rapid City's working on kind of a different model a little bit. But even at some of these conferences that we've been at, I mean, to have them recognize with thousands of people in the room the work that Pennington County and Minnehaha County are doing in collaboration with those municipalities is huge. I mean, I think I was the only one that stood up and gave a big woo, shocker, right? But I mean, it's amazing to say, yeah, we can pave the way here in South Dakota and make some positive change to serve our constituents. And even in the time of COVID, there's big mental challenges and struggles for people, from financial to health to just life, and what does life look like when you're isolated for so long. And so it's exciting. It's been really a marathon, and I'm grateful that it's being done the right way versus just do it to do it. Let's get it done in the right way so that this can be sustainable into the future. So thank you, and thanks for the other people that are here. I would be remiss if I did not mention Carrie Benz and Aaron Surskin for all the work that you two have done. Aaron kind of brought me alongside, and at first I was like, I don't know if I want to be involved. I don't know. And she's very persistent. And so I'm grateful for those relationships and the vision that so many people had for this project, because this really will change, I think, how mental health and really free up space in the hospitals. We've talked about, if you don't need the ER, don't go to the ER. Just kind of like, if you don't need to go to jail, don't go to jail. Let's find ways that we can make sure people are still active in the community without locking them up in a hospital room or a jail cell. So thank you for everyone involved, and congratulations on leading the project, and it sounds like you'll do very well. Thank you.
Other questions?
I do, Mr. Chair, but I didn't know
Councilor
if you
Starr?
wanted to check on the phone first. I would gladly defer to whoever's on, if there's anybody on the phone.
Anybody on the phone have any questions?
Not at the moment.
Then I do.
It's up to you.
Thank
There
you. Assistant Director, thank you. This is awesome. I mean, it's one of those things that I think in one meeting I said, why can't we do this today? And I know it is a marathon, like Councilor Erickson said, and it's frustrating. But to see it come to fruition is awesome. You talked a lot about detox moving into the facility. What other services do you see that currently exist that we're going to try to put into one place, or are we still waiting for that vendor putting it together?
Yeah, I mean, I think the vendor will have a lot to add, but there are certain levels of service that we want to be able to provide. We want someone to be able to walk in and have behavioral health triage and a substance use assessment, regardless of who the vendor is. How that is done, or by what staff, by what protocols, those are the things that the vendor will help us with. But minimally, any resident with a mental health crisis or substance use disorder should be able to walk into the doors. Again, we do want to, the intention is that the county detox will move into the triage center, allowing for that service to be provided in a community-based setting, and increasing the level of detox that's provided, moving from a social detox to a medically managed detox. Also, acute care, psychiatric needs, we want to be able to address, and we want to be able to provide, whether it's through the vendor or partnerships, case management that will help navigate that person to the next best place for them. Sometimes it'll be home, sometimes it may be to primary care, maybe another provider in the community, but making sure that we aren't losing that patient and that we're reducing the amount of times that patient may be cycling through different types of care, that we have that in place.
Thank you. It was one of the things that last week we had someone at public input that really made the case for how we provide detox, and maybe there's a way to do it in a much more caring, effective way that people can be treated. So it really drove home last week when he was here sharing his personal story, and as much as you can do in 3 minutes, and being able to do that. When do I start calling it the Link? I mean, we're ready for the new name, so I want to make sure I don't get stuck in triage center or how. I mean, I know it's been announced publicly and shared, but are we sticking with triage center for a while yet, or are we?
Well, probably
when will we announce
my
Link,
presentations, yes, I'll continue to refer to it as the triage center. We really want to give the opportunity of that nonprofit to make that announcement, as well as a logo, and as well as hopefully in future weeks and months, a vendor as well. So those announcements really are to come from a partnership between the 4 entities. So
Perfect. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions?
Chairman Schulberg,
Yes, Counselor Brecky.
I just want to add my support for the project and I guess excitement and feeling just very lucky to be a part of a group of people who's going to make the decision to move this forward. I think it has so much potential to help so many people who desperately need that help and at a time when they need it more than anything else. And having had dealt with loved ones who have dealt with addiction and alcohol issues, and have had experience in the system as it currently exists, it really, for me, it becomes very personal, my support as I watch this move forward, because I know it's going to be so much better for so many people. So thank you to you, Alicia, and then all the other people in the audience today. I look forward to looking at the agreement and hearing from you next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Anybody else? Counselor Neitzer?
I'm not sure I saw it in here. You made reference to a report. Is there going to be required audits and the ability for, where appropriate, for us to do some sort of an audit or a review as well?
Well, what I was referring to earlier, there's a provision in the contract that where the Triage Center nonprofit will produce an operational report so that the partners can examine those reports prior to going into the future years. Also, the evaluation plan that I was referring to, there was a data agreement between the 4 entities that allowed for the initial needs assessment to come together. The intention is that we will have a new data agreement between the entities as well that will allow for that ongoing evaluation. I'm sure that there will be a public-facing report and also a report for the nonprofit. When you have healthcare information, we want to just make sure that whatever is released to the public is aggregated, but those would be the types of reports that I could see coming before you, as well as anything that requires city resources, such as the lease, such as this agreement that commits financial dollars. Those things will always come before you publicly as well.
Yeah, and I was really, one of the focus would be on financial accountability whenever we're providing funding. And it could be, I should know this, but I suspect a nonprofit may, by IRS rules, they may have to have an audit yearly or something anyway. I'm not certain of that.
I can check on that for you and bring it back next week.
And it's not quite as clean when we have multiple partners, so it may not be appropriate to have visibility of everything, but just whatever we would have to make sure that, our money, we're being good stewards of the tax dollars, that's in the agreement somewhere or dealt with. So,
okay.
Thanks.
Any other questions? My question would be, you touched on the suicide attempts and calls, and obviously I would think that we might expect this in the current crisis. It's gone up. Do we have any numbers or percentages, and how are we handling?
I don't have numbers. Let me go back to my notes and see what I brought for you today. For the mental health calls, the increase with the police department, their calls in the same time period for 2019 was 95, and then this year, March and April was 200, or through March and April was 215 calls, so that was a 126% increase in mental health calls. And as I mentioned, they did not report, thankfully, completed suicides, but an increase in calls, and I could follow up and try to get that exact number for you.
No, that's a good, it gives us an idea. I just
Right.
hope people out there know that if they need help, that they call. They
Right,
reach.
and I do know that the Helpline Center, while they have a reported increase in calls related to mental health and addiction needs, they haven't had an increase with suicide calls.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any more questions? Certainly appreciate the update. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for your time, and thank you to the many, many, many partners who put in years of work prior to me being able to stand up here and present this to everyone, so thank you.
Thank you. All right, that's it for presentations today. Any public input on the topic today? If not, we will adjourn and see you at 7. Thank you.